Is this the end of Genshin Impact? What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Malnoxx. Today, we're going to take a look at Tower of Fantasy versus Genshin Impact. Now, Tower of Fantasy has been out for about a week now. I've tried it out, I've played it, I played it on stream last night, and I played it a little bit off stream, maybe for a total of 3 hours or so. So this is just going to be my opinion, my look at what I like about Tower of Fantasy, what I don't like, how it's the same, how it's different from Genshin. Can they exist together? Or is one gonna push the other one out? That's what we're here to try to answer today. So the first thing I want to talk about is the controls and how moving around feels in these games. Now, if you're coming from playing Genshin Impact, Tower of Fantasy is gonna feel very familiar to you as far as the controls go. You move around with WASD, interact with objects using F, you right click in order to dash, space bars to jump. That's all pretty par for the course and pretty standard for most PC games out there. Now in Tower of Fantasy, you can choose to either dash to begin sprinting or have an auto sprint start up as you're running forward. And you do have a dash meter or dash energy, similar to the stamina you get in Genshin Impact. When you start out in Tower of Fantasy, you can dash 3 times before you run out of stamina. Now, unlike Genshin Impact, it seems that in Tower of Fantasy, the charged attacks that you use don't use the same stamina that your dodges and your dashes do. The other cool thing about Tower of Fantasy is that you can double jump in the game by pressing spacebar a second time in the air, and you can even dash while you're in the air. This makes moving around through the air feel a lot quicker. Now, like in Genshin Impact, you also get a glider in Tower of Fantasy. The glider feels really slow, but when you combine it together with the dash in the air, your aerial movement is a lot quicker than your aerial movement is in Genshin Impact without having characters like Zhao. The other cool thing about the jetpack in Tower of Fantasy is that you can hold down your jetpack button and boost yourself up into the air, similar to Venti's skill or Kazuha's skill in Genshin Impact. You'll also notice that climbing feels very much the same, with the ability to just run into a wall and begin climbing it, and then jumping up, expending stamina to get up a little bit higher, a little bit faster. Now, it should be noted that Tower of Fantasy touts itself as an MMO. You're playing with other characters on a server in this world, whereas Genshin Impact, while you can play with your friends, it is an RPG game, not designed to be an MMO like Tower of Fantasy is. So as you go through in the beginning, as you're questing through, the questing in Tower of Fantasy definitely feels a little bit more MMO-esque. You have your main story quest that you're following, and you have the line that's progressing, telling you where to go, and then you have the side quests that are branching off. Now this is very similar to Genshin Impact. You have your Archon quests, you have world quests and other quests that pop up throughout the time, but the way that the quests flow in Tower of Fantasy reminds me more of an MMO than it does in Genshin Impact. Maybe that's all in my head because I know Tower of Fantasy is supposed to be an MMO, and so I'm perceiving it that way. But in the brief time I played it, I really did feel more like an MMO style questing. So if that's something that you enjoy, then Tower of Fantasy questing style might be something you enjoy as well. Quests in Tower of Fantasy seem to have been broken down into a lot smaller steps, such as go here and talk to this person, then go here and grab these things, and come back and talk to this person again. Whereas in Genshin Impact, I feel like the quest might be go here and talk to this person, but it seems like there's a longer period between different sections of the quest as you're progressing through Genshin Impact, where in Tower of Fantasy, they seem broken up into much smaller chunks. Let's talk about the combat. In Tower of Fantasy, you control one character that uses 3 different weapons. Now, at the beginning of the game, you do get the ability to customize this character. And as you can see, I had to try to make my girl Yoimiya here. But that character can be changed as you pull. Now, the 5 stars in Tower of Fantasy are called SSR rank. And when you pull an SR or an SSR, which is the equivalent of a 4-star or a 5-star in Genshin Impact, you not only get the weapon, but you also get what's called a simulacra or a mimic of the character that used that weapon. You can use the weapon without using that character. However, you do have the ability to use that character if you so choose for a different appearance, and then later down the line, some of the different traits that they will bring to combat. Now, as you're fighting, you can swap between those weapons, utilize a weapon skill, charged attacks, and when you dodge an attack, if you get a perfect dodge, then time slows down in this purple bubble, and you have the option to switch to a different weapon to unleash a more powerful attack. If you have a charged meter that's full, you can switch weapons to again unleash a powerful elemental attack with that weapon. Maybe it's because I've been playing it for so much longer, but I have to say that I prefer Genshin Impact's combat style over Tower of Fantasy. In Genshin Impact, I like having the 4 different characters with their skills and their bursts and switching between those characters, which is similar to switching between weapons in Tower of Fantasy, but for me personally, I felt like the swapping between the weapons felt a little bit clunky sometimes. Maybe it was a me problem, but today when I was recording some footage for this video, I was having some issues with some lag or some enemies not actually being where they were being displayed in the world. That is to say, I would hit an enemy, and then a couple seconds later, they would all of a sudden disappear and reappear somewhere else and wouldn't be taking damage from my attacks. And this might be due to some server instability on their side, or maybe the internet connection wasn't great or something like that, but that is something that is more prevalent in an MMO versus in an RPG game like Genshin Impact, where there's not as much a load on that server in that particular instance, because you don't have a lot of other people in the game with you like you do in Tower Fantasy. I also did experience some long load times and some actual game crashes when I first loaded up Tower Fantasy last night to play, but it's only been out for a week, so technical issues, I suppose, are to be expected at this point. Technical issues aside, I really did have fun playing Tower Fantasy. It is a game that I really could see myself enjoying, and coming into it as a new player, the amount of content does seem nice. Time will tell if that amount of content is able to be kept up. Now, just like in Genshin Impact, where you level up your characters and your weapons, in Tower of Fantasy, you level up the weapons, and as you level them up, they become more powerful. You can also make different presets, just like you can have preset teams in Genshin. You can have presets of which weapons you want to use in Tower of Fantasy to make swapping between them a lot quicker. Also, on the topic of movement, it should be noted that there are mounts in Tower of Fantasy, which is something you would expect from an MMO. I mean, most MMOs would have some sort of mount that you can get around faster because the world is so large. That's something I really wish the Genshin Impact would implement, some way to quickly travel around aside from just the waypoints. If you want to run around, but you want to run a little bit faster. So in Tower of Fantasy, you do have the option to use mounts to get around faster. Tower of Fantasy is a gacha style game, just like Genshin Impact, so to get the new characters, the new SR and SSR weapons, you do need to wish. There's a standard wish banner where you're using purple and gold wishes, and then there's a limited banner, just like in Genshin, where you're using these red wishes to get the character that you want that's only available for a limited amount of time. Wishing feels very similar in both of the games. You click on the button, you get a cool looking animation, and then you see what you got. And in both games, if you get a duplicate of an item, you're able to further upgrade that item and enhance its power. Now currently, Tower of Fantasy has a lot of incentives for people coming over and a lot of milestones they hit for total downloads and things like that are getting people really excited because they're being front-loaded with a lot of these rewards. But that's a common game mechanic in almost every game that you play. You get showered with these rewards at the beginning, and then they start to dwindle off as you progress further and further in the game. If you look at Genshin Impact, we had our adventure journal. You had a lot of quests to get a lot of primo gems pretty quick at the beginning. And then recently we've had some more additions to the adventure journal that give you further rewards to help you upgrade artifacts, get new artifacts, etc. I will say the rewards at the beginning do seem like they're a little bit more generous in Tower of Fantasy. Also, the cost of wishes in Tower of Fantasy seems to be a little bit lower. If we look here at the store, it seems that you can get 10 wishes for $5. I don't know if that's a one-time thing. I personally haven't spent any money on Tower of Fantasy, and I don't have plans to, but it is something to keep in mind. And again, all these rewards right at the beginning are awesome, and it's great. But if it doesn't continue that same way, people are going to get disappointed, and they're going to end up stopping to play the game. Now, is this the death of Genshin Impact? No, I don't think it is at all. The games feel very different. There are definitely similarities in the movement, there's definitely similarities in the look and the feel of the game, but going from Tower of Fantasy back to Genshin Impact, it still feels like a totally different game. It doesn't feel like you're playing the same thing. They cater to totally different audiences, in my opinion. There's definitely some crossover there, but there's people that like the MMO aspect a lot, people that like the RPG aspect a lot more. There's people that like the more futuristic setting of Tower of Fantasy versus the more medieval fantasy setting of Genshin Impact. I think that both of these games can exist together with no problem. There's no reason that they both can't be successful, and there's no reason that they both can't push each other to improve. Genshin Impact definitely needs a game that's going to challenge it, that's going to take players away from its player base to hopefully spur them on to continue to be innovative and creative and potentially more generous with the player base, which is a big complaint that I've seen all across social medias. I mean, just look at what happened with the anniversary last year. So is it the Genshin killer that it touted itself to be? No, I think not. But it is the new kid on the block right now, and it's getting a lot of attention. Because of that, I definitely think it's something to keep an eye on, and I definitely think it's worth picking up and giving a try for yourself. Let me know down in the comments below if you're picking it up, if you've already picked it up, and what you think so far. And again, we're all gamers here. We love games. We love playing games. We love talking about games. Let's keep it civil. I've seen a lot of disagreements between people that like Tower Fantasy, people that like Genshin Impact, going back and forth. But hey, again, They're both games. I think they're both fun, so let's spread love down in those comments, not hate. If you want to join me for some Genshin Impact gameplay, I'm an official Genshin creator and I stream over on Twitch. Link is down in the description below, and we might be peppering in some Tower of Fantasy content every now and again. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe, leave a like if you liked it, and ring that bell if you want to be notified of when we upload new videos. That's all from me for today. Until next time, you stay legendary, and remember the sun will rise, and we will try again. Peace out.